Trump, Israel IRA with tilde, 12 biblical signs that prove the end is now, shocking revelations. The air crackled with anticipation as the clock struck midnight. The world held its breath. In every corner of the globe, a collective shiver snaked through the souls of millions. Something was brewing, mysterious, ominous, a storm on the horizon. Rumors whispered through dark alleys and coffee shops alike. This ain't just gossip, folks, this is a sign. The end is near. The tension was palpable. Just last week, an ancient scroll was discovered buried beneath an old church in Jerusalem. They called it a miracle, but the locals knew better. It's cursed, they said, eyes wide with fear. Those words echoed through the crowd, drifting into the night like smoke from a dying fire. The scroll, it was rumored, detailed the rise and fall of nations, hinting at a catastrophic showdown that would change everything. Were these the prophecies of old? The signs of our impending doom? Elsewhere, reports flooded in from the deep woods of North Carolina. Strange lights danced among the trees, flickering like fireflies, but they were colder, sharper. An eerie glow that twisted shadows into monstrous shapes, leaving hikers trembling and lost. A hiker told his story with trembling hands. I swear it looked like something watching me. The locals dismissed it as tales spun from fear, but could it be connected to the scroll? A shared thread of fate intertwining strangers across the ocean. Then there was the harsh laughter in the halls of power, a voice like thunder, Trump, back on the scene, promising to re-establish alliances with Israel that never quite healed. Could his return trigger something as sinister as what was foretold? The way he spoke sent chills down spines, each word a hammer striking an anvil. We're taking back what's ours. The distrust rippled through the crowd, a grappling force of anger and anticipation. What kind of moves was he plotting? And why did it feel like the time of reckoning was approaching? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. A shivering thought crept into the minds of those who listened. What if these signs were just the beginning? The scroll, the lights, Trump's booming voice, it all felt too significant. Was there a connection to keep us awake at night? The air thickened with despair as an overwhelming question burned. If these were truly the signs, what should we do? People began to gather, whispering in circles as the moon glared down, as if keeping watch over secret fates. And right then, the ground trembled, a low rumble that shook them to their core. Was that fear? Or fate? The answer loomed just out of reach, but one thing was clear: something sinister was in motion, and they were all about to fall down the rabbit hole. The night thickened, a heavy blanket of unease wrapping around everyone. Gasps echoed, mixed with murmurs of dread. What had they just felt? A tremor? Or was it something deeper, a warning from the earth itself? The crowd's energy surged, a wild tide of panic and anticipation, eyes darting from face to face, seeking reassurance that they were all in this together. What if it's true? Someone shouted, his voice quivering. What if we're really under judgment? Silence quickly swallowed his words. The tension became a taut string, ready to snap. In the dark, a figure emerged from the nearby shadows. It was David, the hiker who had seen the strange lights. His skin was pale, eyes wide, as if he had just escaped a nightmare and was now trapped in a waking one. You don't understand. He stammered, breathless. It's not just lights. There is something out there, a presence, it feels ancient. A woman in the crowd stepped closer, her voice trembling but steady. What do you mean? She pressed. What did you see? He gripped the edges of his jacket, eyes darting nervously. I was deep in the woods, and there were these shapes among the trees like shadows that didn't belong. They watched me. I could feel them looking right through me. The moment hung heavy in the air, unsettled glances exchanged among the assemble. Upset and curiosity mingled on their faces, some were skeptical, while others visibly recoiled at the thought of something lurking just beyond human perception. Meanwhile, a distant roar echoed across the hills. The sound curled through the night like a sinister whisper, causing the crowd to lean in closer. What was that? A few inched back, their faces pale and taut with fear. Trump's speech replayed in the minds of the listeners, words wrapping around them like chains. Taking back what's ours. It echoed ominously, suggesting a storm ahead with no clear path of escape. Something within felt wrong, as if their very souls were at odds with the looming threat. Then another tremor struck, this time more forceful, a deep growl beneath their feet that set everything in motion. A flashlight flickered on in the crowd, illuminating the frantic expressions of the people. "We need to leave," someone urged, panic creeping into every syllable, but where could they go? The forest whispered secrets, the ground rumbled with unease, and the horizon lay thick with uncertainty. Suddenly, dim shapes began to coalesce in the darkness just beyond the tree line, shadows that stretched and twisted, blurring the line between reality and something unearthly. "We can't stay here," David screamed, pulling at any onlooker he could reach. "Look! They're coming!" Instinct kicked in. People began to scatter, a desperate flurry in all directions. The trails they had once walked carefree moments before now morphed into labyrinths of chaos. In the midst of turmoil, a chilling voice pealed through the panic, steady, commanding, almost seductive. "Stay with me," it urged, resonating through the crowd with an otherworldly echo. "Together, we can unveil the truth." There it was again, the irony of certainty amidst terror. Just who was the voice? The shadows danced menacingly, each heartbeat intensifying their pulse. As David glanced back, a figure emerged from the shadows, radiating both fear and authority. "You were chosen to witness this," it whispered, pointing toward the growing void behind. "The reckoning begins," and just like that, the chilling question hung in the air: were they ready for what was about to be unleashed? The ground heaved once more, a surging pulse shaking the very foundation of their sanity. David turned, heart racing, as shadows punched through the night canvas, grasping for the edges of the terrified crowd. Faces contorted in horror relayed doubt, terror, and an overwhelming need to flee. Yet, where could they escape? Every direction led to darkness thick and inviting, as if the very forest conspired to swallow them whole. "Stick together!" David shouted, rallying those nearby. He could barely hear his own voice against the cacophony of chaos. People screamed, some tripped over roots hidden in the night, while others pushed forward blindly, desperate for safety. Yet every decision seemed to magnify their peril. Suddenly, the voice returned, now carved clearer through the clamor. "Do not find the path, let the path find you," it sang, a melody of temptation that lured some closer, pulling them into the shadows. A group of 4 turned, entranced by the sound, eyes glazed like marionettes on strings. David's stomach knotted. "Get away from it!" he shouted, but his words felt like bullets against a storm. A wave of uncertainty crashed over him. Who was that entangling the crowd? He reached for the nearest person, a middle-aged man with eyes wide and breath coming in rasps. "What are you doing?" "We can't trust one feel it," the man murmured, shaking as if gripped by some invisible force. "It promises knowledge, power, something we've never known." David felt anger flare within him. "And what price are you willing to pay? This isn't a game." But the man simply stared, caught in a web of fascination, torn between fear and allure. As if sensing their hesitation, the shadows thickened, morphing and swirling as if alive. David took a step back, eyes wide with dread. The darkness seemed to breathe, swallowing any remaining light. The hiker's stomach churned. If they let themselves be consumed, there would be no chance of escape. The steady rumbling continued, almost rhythmic now, as figures began to emerge, an amalgam of darkness and form, distorting reality. David felt a chill run through him. They were not mere watchers, they were collectors, seekers of souls. "Run!" David screamed, flinging his arm toward the wood's edge. "This way!" His voice sliced through the crowd, cutting the fog of dread momentarily. People hesitated, torn by the void but pushed by survival instinct. Shouting and pushing as a collective, they began to follow, hearts racing, minds clouded with questions, but the allure of the voice intertwined with the shadows was strong. "Stay, and we shall grant you the truth you seek." Each word floated on the air, wrapping around some like a soft blanket, begging them to remain. In the distance, the roar grew louder, a terrifying symphony of threat that made the ground tremble beneath them. David looked back. The figure had grown larger, more defined, a colossal silhouette against the wavering shadows, authority radiating from it. "David!" A woman cried out, pulling at his sleeve frantically. The same woman who had questioned him earlier now bore a look of desperation. "What if we can't escape?" His heart ached for her, for all of them. "We have to try. We need to keep moving forward together." As they pressed deeper into the unknown, the darkness followed, hungry and relentless. David's resolve melded with fear, his thoughts racing. What awaited them at the end of this horror? Would they unveil the truth, or would the enlightenment come at a cost too steep? The shadows swelled, ready to pounce as a sharp crack echoed from above, lighting the sky briefly with unnatural pulse. "Look!" Someone yelled, pointing upward, excitement warping into terror. But as David followed the gaze, a powerful surge from behind sent him sprawling to the ground. The shadows surged forward, and the voice grew like thunder. "Your destiny awaits just beyond the veil." And as David struggled to rise, he realized with a brush of horror that they might not be able to withstand what came next. What had they awakened? And when the fate of so many dangled in the balance, would courage prove mightier than fear? David felt the earth tremble beneath him, the once stable ground now a furious beast clawing for release. He pushed himself up, the weight of dread crashing down. Around him, the crowd was a swirling mass of frantic movement and terrified screams. The shadows surged closer, ravenous, calling for souls to claim. "Keep going!" he shouted, his raw voice echoing through the cacophony. But fear rooted them in place. Faces were fixed in horror, some still entranced by the siren call of that mystical voice. They staggered, glancing back as if considering the bargain whispered into their hearts. "No! Don't look!" someone shouted from the rear of the group. A young woman, her name escaped him, but he recognized the fierce determination in her eyes. "We can't let it take us." David nodded, relief flooding through him. "Then push forward. Move." With every ounce of strength, he grabbed her wrist, urging the others to do the same. The ground quaked harder. A fissure split the earth only a few feet away, revealing an abyss that seemed to yawn with hungry flames licking at its edges, curled arms of heat threatening to touch them. The collective gasp mingled with screams as people fell away, drawn by the unseen pull of darkness. The woman's eyes widened. "David! We can't go that way." He turned to reassess the encroaching shadows. They rolled like a tidal wave, undulating and shifting into grotesque shapes, faces emerging only to dissolve again. There was no safe direction. "We have to find higher ground. This way," he urged, pointing toward a rise that loomed in the distance, although even it was shrouded in thick mist. "Get moving." Another voice joined, an older man pushing past, driven by primal instinct. With a collective gasp, the group surged towards the incline, but the shadows were faster. They crept, tendrils of darkness extending, whispering promises woven with despair. David could feel them brush against his skin like an icy caress. "There's no way out." Someone yelled, the panic spreading like wildfire. The doubts crept in. Was there truly no escape from this nightmare? Then, an earth-shattering roar ripped through the air, more bone-chilling than anything they had encountered. Everyone froze, terror punctuating the moment like a gasp. The ground beneath them shook violently. The shadows pulsed with the beat of a dark heart, and David realized the darkness wasn't merely chasing them, it was alive, it wanted them to feel despair. "Run!" he shouted again as he stumbled backward, nearly losing his footing. He caught the young woman's eye, pleading, "Please, don't give up." With each step they took, the roar grew louder, echoing within their chests, thrumming like a war drum. They approached a narrow path leading up, but the shadows, hungry and relentless, began to unfurl like a monstrous flower, rising walls of blackness closing in on all sides. "David, what if it knows where we're going?" she whispered, her voice almost lost in the fray. "What if there's no escape?" His heart clenched, gripping the hope that seemed to dissolve with each passing breath. "We have to believe. For ourselves. For each other." David shouted, but his own doubt lingered like a spectre, clawing at his resolve. As they barreled upward, the shadows reached further and crept higher, grasping against their ankles. David felt a sharp pain as one cold fingertip grazed his heel, sucking warmth and vitality. A desperate fight surged through his veins. Nothing would take them down. Not today, but then a terrible flash blazed through the trees, an intense light in stark contrast to the shadows. David turned to see it, blinding and ethereal, cutting through the dark. "What is that?" someone gasped. Could this be salvation? Or merely another trick? "Stay close," David commanded. That light pulsed again, and he felt it beckon, a siren's call for the lost and weary. He couldn't tell if it was safe. "Forward!" he made himself shout, despite the tightening grip of uncertainty in his chest. As they pressed on, a sharp voice echoed above the din, whipping into the darkness, "You think you can escape your fate?" David halted. Was there truly more to this? What had they awoken? Did they have the strength to uncover whatever lay ahead, or would they become but fleeting shadows themselves? But the call of the light surged once more, sparkling with hope, or was it merely another illusion? A final push lay before them, and with the shadows clawing at their backs, they might not have much time to decide where would they land when they leaped into the unknown. They surged forward, breathless, heartbeats thundering in unison. The light flickered, pulsing like a heartbeat, offering a fragile beacon in the chaos. David could feel the oppressive weight of darkness at their back, the whispering shadows clawing for a final grasp. "Don't stop. Everyone. Keep pushing," he exclaimed, pulling the woman beside him closer as the band of frightened souls pressed onward through the underbrush, branches snagging at their clothes like desperate hands reaching out. But as they neared the light, shadows churned behind them, thickening, gathering strength. The air crackled with an unsettling energy that felt like static, creeping into his bones. David turned back, catching a glimpse of the deep maw of darkness. The shapes writhed, silhouettes of lost souls twisted into horrific forms. He shuddered, forcing himself to face forward again. Suddenly, the young woman stumbled, her foot caught on a gnarled root. "David!" she cried out, panic-stricken as she fell. He quickly reached for her, a surge of adrenaline pushing him beyond the fear that clawed at his insides. "I've got you." He grasped her wrist, pulling her back up with surprising strength. The shadows behind them lunged closer, their voices rising, filled with despair and hunger. "We can't stop." The light, he started, but then hesitated. The light was now clearer, more defined, pulsing faster like a runaway heartbeat. They were almost there, but doubt crashed into him. What if it's a trap? Do we have a choice? She yelled, her eyes wide, reflections of determination fighting against the crushing fear. "Let us take the chance," he replied, the words glowing with desperation and hope. The group surged forward again, driven by the need for escape. They tore through the brush, and the moment they breached the clearing, breath escaped David in a gasp. The light enveloped them, swirling in radiant colors, a cacophony of warmth that kissed their skin. It felt almost otherworldly, as if time itself had frozen, and they had stepped into a realm untouched by the dark. David blinked, heart hammering, barely believing it was real. Yet, the shadows pulsed like a thunderous wave behind them, licking hungrily at their heels, whispering vile promises. "Join us, it's easier." David swallowed hard, pressing forward through the brightness. The others followed, faces illuminated by the shimmering glow, each step taking them further from despair, and then, as if sensing their resolve, the ground shook again, not with tremors of fear but with the full force of a storm unleashed. The light flickered, a menacing pulse this time, illuminating a vast, unexpected chasm before them, swirling in chaos. "What now?" someone gasped, eyes wide with terror, glancing back at the shadows closing in like death itself. "We need to." David started, but a sudden crack of thunder silenced him. The light dimmed for a heartbeat before bursting back into brilliance. It shimmered like liquid fire, radiating power that made his skin tingle. "Jump!" The command surged from the woman at his side, her eyes ablaze with courage. "What?" The word escaped David in disbelief. "Into that? It's our only way out. We can't go back." The shadows snarled behind them, their forms twisting and hissing. In that moment, as the abyss of the chasm beckoned, David made the choice. "Together!" he shouted. They leaped. The world spun in a whirlwind of colors and sound as they dove into the mystery below. The shadows lunged after them, but the light enveloped them, shielding them from the darkness. But then, a chilling realization gripped him. The light felt alive, thrumming with an energy he didn't fully understand. Was it leading them toward salvation or deeper into their doom? As the darkness receded, David felt a tug from within, a new direction, or perhaps a warning. "What waits below?" he thought. The pulse of the light was stronger now, blending with the shadows until he could no longer distinguish between them. And then, a whisper, soft yet commanding: "You cannot escape, your fate is already written." Where were they headed? What new horrors awaited them in this strange, luminous void? Colors swirled chaotically around them as they fell through the luminous void. It felt as if they were suspended in time, twisting and turning, yet moving without motion. David could hardly breathe. The light enveloping him was both comforting and terrifying. The others screamed, their voices echoing as if trapped in a tunnel. Then a harsh jolt hit him. A solid surface beneath their feet. Stumbling, David barely kept his balance as he surveyed the strange new landscape. The colors faded, shifted to a haunting twilight, an eerie twilight with a ground that pulsed rhythmically. Lush mangroves surrounded them, but the essence felt wrong, tainted by a lingering dread. "Where are we?" the young woman gasped, her face pale, uncertainty etched into every feature. David looked around. Shadows danced at the edges, flickering like dying embers. He felt the familiar chill creep up his spine, a reminder of the horrors they'd just fled. I don't know," he replied, his voice trembling. "But we need to stick together." He glanced back at the group, a mix of fear and hope in their wide eyes. Suddenly, one of the men stepped forward, pointing at the sky. "Look!" David followed his gaze. A massive orb hovered above them, pulsating with raw energy. It shone bright, flickering like a faulty bulb. In its glow, fleeting images flashed, faces twisted in agony, cities crumbling, and vast expanses of darkness swallowing the light. "What is that?" someone whispered, voice cracking. "It's like a window into our worst fears," David murmured, his heart racing. "We have to avoid it." But the orb drew nearer, a gravitational pull he couldn't explain. David fought against the instinct to look away. It wasn't just a reflection, it felt alive, crawling inside his mind. The whispers began again, soft and sinister, calling out like mesmerizing sirens. "You are meant to be here, embrace it." He shook his head, squeezing his eyes shut. "No. Don't listen." The shadows stirred, reshaping into ghostly figures, leaning closer, probing at their minds. David pressed his palms against his ears. "Stay focused. We have to find a way out." Suddenly, the ground felt unsteady beneath him, as if responding to the chaos above. The air became thick, suffocating. David gasped as he caught a glimpse of another figure in the distance, shrouded in dark robes, standing unfazed by the swirling madness. The figure beckoned them closer with a single skeletal hand. "Who is that?" a woman exclaimed in horror. "Maybe it's a guide," David said, but his own voice lacked certainty. "Or a trap." The shadows coiled tighter, threatening to swallow them whole. Anxiety surged within him, their fears clawing to be set free. "We can't let it take us. We need answers." With a sudden impulse, he took a step toward the figure, calling out, "Wait. We need help." The figure tilted its head, and the flicker of the orb brightened in response, illuminating the features beneath the heavy hood. A thin smile stretched across its face, revealing teeth that glowed sharpened and ominous. "You seek answers, but the truth comes at a cost," the figure rasped, its voice smooth yet edged with malice. "What do you want from us?" David shot back, anger and fear entwined in his tone. "Every choice carries a price. Will you pay it?" Heavy silence fell like a shroud, and the shadows loomed closer, offering no escape. David could feel the pressure mounting, adrenaline surging through his veins. He glanced at the group, the fear stark in their eyes. How much longer could they hold back the rising tide of darkness? Suddenly, light flickered above them again, the orb throbbing as if it bore witness to their decision. David's heart raced, a violent drum, as he realized the weight of their fate rested in that moment, teetering on the edge of revelation. What if knowing the truth is worse than the darkness? He thought desperately. He turned back to the cloaked figure. "Tell us then. Whatever it is, we need to know." "Very well," it purred, and as it spoke, the shadows writhed hungrily, eager for the verdict. The ground shook once more, and David felt the air crackle with electric tension. What would the cost be? And then the whispers rose to a fevered pitch. Everything or nothing. What would they sacrifice to uncover the truth? What price were they willing to pay? The cloaked figure leaned closer, the shadows curling like smoke around it. "To know the truth, you must face your greatest fears. Each sacrifice will unveil the secrets of this realm," it rasped, its voice sliding into David's mind like ice. Every ounce of David's resolve quaked. "What do you mean? What do you want us to give up?" he demanded, gripping the air as if he could physically pull answers from the figure's grasp. The figure straightened, the darkness swirling like a vengeful cloud. "A memory, a desire, a piece of your very soul. Choose wisely, for each will deepen the bonds of your connection here." A shudder rippled through the group. They had already lost so much. What more could they sacrifice? David's stomach churned. A tremor echoed underfoot, sending vibrations through his legs. The orb above pulsed with a feverish urgency, casting haunting shadows on their faces. "This is insane!" shouted one of the men, panic seeping through each word. "We can't just offer pieces of ourselves to a monster." "It's not a monster, it's a guide," another retorted, though the fear in her eyes betrayed her. "We need to know what's happening. We can't keep running blind." David could hardly breathe as the weight of their predicament crushed in on him. He glanced at his friends Lisa, Mark, Sarah. Each face reflected the same turmoil. "Hey, listen," David finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "What if this is a lie? What if it's a trick to trap us further? I say we don't pay anything." As if on cue, the shadows hissed, tightening around them with a hunger that sent shivers down David's spine. The ground pulsed stronger, like the heartbeat of a beast disturbed. His heart raced. "We need to decide now. What do we want to keep, the truth or our sanity?" The figure's skeletal hand hovered patiently, as though inviting them to look deeper into themselves. The orb flickered again, revealing flashes, moments of laughter, joy, love interspersed with dark memories of loss, of dreams snatched away. It hurt to watch. "I don't care about the truth," Mark suddenly shouted, a wild glint in his eyes. "I'll give my worst memory. I just want out of here." The words hung in the air, charged with tension. David's pulse thundered in his ears. No. What if the memory you lose is something worse? You don't know the price. I know enough. Mark shot back, resolute, but the shadows seemed emboldened by the desperate plea. I won't risk my memories for something we can't control. Lisa interjected, trembling. Maybe we could find another way, a different choice. Fear drives us here, it also binds us, the figure intoned with chilling calm. Consider what you value most and what kind of clarity you seek. Will you stand united, or will you let fear fracture your resolve? David took a breath, heart racing. Could they really trust the hazy, whispered promises of the figure? But the orb above throbbed with an unsettling energy, as if urging them to decide. What if we face our fears together? He proposed tentatively, glancing at each of them. What if we mask our pain by sharing our burdens? The group fell silent, uncertainty crackling like static among them. The shadows twitched with impatience, clawing closer. In that moment, they realized they were teetering on the brink. Now, the stakes had transformed, shifting from individual sacrifice to collective courage. Would they venture into the storm as one, or would fear tear them apart? As David stood poised, the orb erupted in a blinding light, illuminating their faces in stark relief against the encroaching darkness. In that heartbeat before their world changed forever, David could only wonder, would this revelation be their salvation or their doom? As the light enveloped him, the whispers crescendoed, make your choice before the darkness claims you all. What shadows would they face together? What truths lay buried beneath the fear? The blinding light swallowed them whole, scattering the shadows that had been closing in with treacherous intent. For a brief moment, David felt weightless, suspended in an ethereal space devoid of time and fear. As quickly as it had appeared, the light flickered, leaving them standing in a vast, desolate expanse that felt both familiar and utterly strange. Where are we? Sarah's voice trembled as she looked around, her eyes wide with confusion. I don't know, David stammered, glancing at the orb which now loomed above them, pulsating with a steady rhythm. Shadows writhed at its edges, hinting that darkness was never far off. Mark stepped forward, his bravado energy dimmed. I wanted to face it. But this? This isn't what I signed up for. The air grew thick with an electric tension. The shadows that had been banished now returned, slithering around their feet as if testing the ground. They whispered of fears unspoken, secrets buried deep, and the memories they had each fought to guard. Remember, you must confront what lingers in your hearts, the figure's voice echoed, now a disembodied whisper reverberating across the landscape. Only then will the truth be revealed. Confront what? Lisa cried, her voice rising over the whispers. I can't even think straight. We're trapped, and there's no end in sight. Suddenly, the ground shook beneath them, and images flickered across the sky like an old film reel. It was a montage of their lives, moments filled with joy, accompanied by the painful echoes of sorrow. Families gathered at tables, laughter ringing through the air, then replaced by tears at gravesides, the stark contrast shredding David's heart. Look closely. The voice insisted. Your pasts intertwine with your futures. Only by laying bare your fears can you cross the threshold. As David stared, a deep-seated dread unfurled within him. He wasn't just witnessing memories, he was feeling them. A lump formed in his throat as the images twisted into his own darkest moments, rejections, fears of abandonment, the last goodbye to his father. Stop it! He screamed, stumbling backward. Stop showing me this. Do you see? The voice fell around him like rain. These are chains. Chains that bind you. You must choose one memory, or risk losing them all. What will bring you freedom? Lisa's voice was barely above a whisper, her eyes locked onto the chaos unfolding before them. We can't just hand over our memories. What if we lose who we are? I'd rather lose my past than stay chained to it, Mark said, now resolutely grim. I'm ready to confront it. No. David shouted, desperation clawing at him. Mark, don't. We don't know the consequences. Please, think about what you could lose. Mark's expression hardened, reflecting a growing determination that sent panic rippling through David's chest. I'm tired of running. I've faced worse than this. The shadows whirled, thickening as if echoing their tension, hinting at an unseen peril. The orb throbbed a darker hue, intensifying its grip. What do you fear? The voice murmured like a haunting lullaby, coaxing them closer to the edge. Give me strength. David blurted suddenly, knowing he needed to act. We will face this together. No matter the cost. But as the words left his lips, the landscape churned violently, spinning into a vortex of darkness. Panic flooded the group, and Lisa reached for David's arm, her grip like a vice, grounding him as they swayed with the chaos. Can you feel it? She gasped. It's changing. With its weight pressing down on them, David felt the rising tide of shadows threatening to engulf them. And in that heartbeat of uncertainty, a pivotal choice loomed, each second dripping with the weight of consequence. Would they stand firm, or be consumed by the darkness? As the void began to pull them in, David shouted, "We have to make our sacrifice now." But would they have the courage to share their fears? Or would they be swept away, lost in the shadows forever? In that harrowing moment, they teetered on the brink of oblivion, unsure if salvation or calamity waited just beyond. The shadows surged around them, twisting and curling like serpents. The force of the orb's grip grew stronger, a pulsing command pressing at their minds. David's heart raced as he grabbed Lisa's shoulder tightly. Everything around him seemed to waver, gravity pulled, and the air thickened. Mark, please. He urged, but the noise swallowed his words. We have to come together. We can't let this tear us apart. In an instant, Mark's determined gaze turned to uncertainty, his fighting spirit flickering like the waning light. What if he started, his voice trembling now? What if they're right? What if facing it means we find a way out? The shadows coiled tighter around him, whispering promises of release. They morphed into ghostly figures, haunting reminders of grief, choices left unmade, friendships betrayed. David felt a bone-deep chill creep in as memories flashed before him, each one sparking greater dread. Look! Lisa pointed, her voice breaking as she backed away. The imagery grew more grotesque, morphing with every heartbeat. Death, heartbreak, guilt. David's darkest fears poured forth, vividly painting their reality. No! He yelled, and a fissure of raw terror rushed through him, igniting a primal instinct to protect. The words tumbled out. Look at what it's doing to you, Mark. You have to fight, not give in. Mark hesitated, visibly shaken. But what if this is all we have left? Exactly. Sarah interjected, tears streaming down her face. If we give it away, we lose the good with the bad. We lose all of it. The shadows erupted in furious howls, swirling faster, almost alive. David felt himself tiptoeing on the edge of despair. This isn't just about your past, Mark. There's still a future to fight for. The orb above them blazed with ferocious energy, a furious heartbeat that resonated in David's bones. You think you can defy fate? You are trapped, fighting against the dark you've allowed to fester. Panic swallowed the group as the ground quaked beneath their feet. Images detonated like fireworks, a frenetic cacophony of pain, love lost, dreams shattered. Every moment tethered in shadow screamed for them to buckle and surrender. David's chest tightened, a lump pressing hard against his throat. This couldn't be it. They were stronger than the shadows, stronger than the wounds of their own making. We can do this. He cried, desperation shaping his voice. We need to choose. It's now or never. Mark's expression flickered between longing and fear. For a moment, he appeared to half-step toward the dark vortex, drawn in as if by an invisible thread. I think I want to let it go. I'm ready. No. David shouted. You can't. The shadows surged again, a tidal wave of darkness threatening to consume everything. What will happen if we lose everything we've known? David shouted, feeling dread crawl on his spine. Maybe it's already too late, Sarah murmured, her voice cracking under the weight of despair. Entire universes of choices spiraled away, leaving the fragments of their lives dotted across the void. As the abyss threatened to pull them under, a breathless moment of silence enveloped them. In that frozen instant, nothing existed except the pulsing rhythm of the orb and the spiraling shadows. Their bodies trembled, scattered under an oppressive weight. With a final, desperate cry, David reached forward. Together. He yelled. We decide together. He felt their hands grasping for one another as the dark enclosed them. Would they summon the strength to confront their nightmares together or let the darkness strip away their very essence? The moment stretched on, fraught with uncertainty, as they felt the rush of the void surround them. And then, just as their grip tightened, a scream pierced the veil of shadows. It echoed into nothingness. What if it led them to freedom or unforgivable ruin? Would they emerge whole, or as mere echoes of themselves? What lay lurking beyond the shadows, waiting? They stood at the precipice of the unknown, the swirling darkness closing in like a vice. David's hands trembled, clutching Lisa's and Mark's, forming a lifeline amidst the chaos. The shadows roared, a chorus of despair pleading for them to let go, to plunge into the depths of their fears and surrender to oblivion. Together. David shouted again, the urgency of his voice cracking through the screams in his mind, dispelling the lingering doubts. We can beat this. We must beat this. In that moment, each of them had to confront their innermost fears. The orb above pulsated violently, rhythms blending with their heartbeats, a relentless metronome of dread and hope. Through the tempest, they recognized their strength not in isolation, but in unity. They didn't have to face their darkness alone, they could face it as one. The shadows seemed to hesitate, resenting their defiance. David felt the pressure around them ease slightly, as if the darkness recognized their resolve and was unsure how to respond. Let us push through. Mark exclaimed, his voice now thick with determination. He could see at the glimmers of a path through the chaos, a way out. What if we don't just face our fears, but embrace them? They're part of who we are, both the light and the dark. The shadows swirled, angry whispers intertwining. Don't listen. They will consume you. You are already locked in their grasp. But Mark's words struck a chord deep within David. Perhaps within choosing to embrace their fears lay the secret to unlocking the chains binding them. What if we give a little? Just enough to break the hold. Lisa suggested, glancing fearfully at the shadows slithering closer. What if we each share just one thing that haunts us? Together, our burdens lessen. A nod from David, and everything clicked into place. The orb dimmed, coming to a gentle glow, beckoning them to act. I'll go first, David declared, breath hitching. When I was a kid, I lost my dad. I was so consumed by fear and regret for never saying goodbye I wished I could turn back time. But now, letting go of that fear, I want to free it. So I let that memory fade. He felt a shift, a tether loosening within him. The shadows shrieked, recoiling briefly, and the orb flared with a warm light. Lisa stepped up, squeezing David's hand tighter. Mine is the fear of never being enough. I always thought if I could do just a little more, they'd stay. But I can't carry this guilt anymore. I release it. The shadows howled, losing more power, and the light surged, swallowing them momentarily in warmth. Mark took a deep breath, a surge of courage swelling in his chest. I'm afraid of failing. Of walking the path that leads me nowhere, of not making a difference. But I'm ready to let that go, too. I trust that whatever lies ahead, I'll face it with you all. As he spoke, the orb blazed brighter, launching streaks of luminescence through the darkness, pushing back against the shadows hungrily clawing at their heels. A chorus of murmurs from the shadows rose, voices merging together in rage and fear. Do not abandon us. You chose to embrace us. Yet now they knew heaviness surrendered became lightness gained. They were stronger than the darkness wrapped around them. With each confession, each sacrifice, they felt renewed strength coursing through their veins, washing away the shadows that sought to claim them. Now, David shouted, gripping his friends tighter. In unity. Let it all go. As they shouted their final resolutions into the storm, the ground heaved beneath their feet then, like smoke parting in the wind, the darkness began to unravel. The memories they released opened pathways of light, illuminating the terrain around them, pushing back against the shadows. As the last of the darkness dissipated, David's heart leapt. They stood on a sparkling bank, sunlight glinting off waters crystalline and pure. The shadows that once threatened had been vanquished, evaporated into the ether. Breathless, the group held each other, overwhelmed by the release of horror. They peered into the waters, and instead of the swirling terror they expected, they saw visions of hope, laughter, supportive bonds, and an unbreakable future. Together, Lisa whispered, we really can face anything, we just have to stand strong. Mark nodded, his eyes lighting up with gratitude. It's a new beginning. We'll walk into the light every time. Before them loomed paths lined with brilliant colors, brightened by skies aglow with possibility. They had faced the storm, danced with shadows, and chosen light, and now, they stepped into a future unfettered from the chains of fear. As they moved forward, a feeling of peaceful assurance washed over them, each step infused with purpose, and in that moment, with everything altered yet seemingly the same, wondering what lay ahead felt less like dread and more like the thrill of potential. Together, they crossed into the new dawn. The past tangled in shadows became nothing more than fading memories, haunting yet liberating, paving the way toward brighter tomorrows. But remember, this isn't the end, just the beginning. What secrets await? You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next step of our journey. Smash that like button because your support fuels this story. Flood the comments with your theories, your reactions, and what you think lies ahead. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this to join us in all the revelations to come.